All right. Now
And I just sent out today
All right, I think everybody is here, so we'll begin the meeting. Welcome to the February 20th, 2024 Board of Supervisors meeting in West Goshen Township, and we'll start tonight's meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, and I'm going to make the announcement that this meeting may be audio and video recorded by third parties, just so everybody's aware. And that will bring us to our public comment period. Is there any member of the public that would like to make a public comment related to something that is not on tonight's agenda? All right, hearing none, then we'll just move right into it. Bring us to our first discussion item, which is discussion regarding a proposed zoning ordinance amendment proposing the addition of temporary student housing as a use in the Plan University main campus overlay district. And we have some representatives from the university with us tonight who I think have a presentation that they would like to show.
Yes.
Okay, and the board, you should have your revised ordinance in front of you, which we will also discuss.
Good evening, Brian Eagle on behalf of the university. And I have David and Michelle with me tonight, who were with me when we had the group from the planning committee, both representatives from university facilities. I'll just walk through generally where we are, and then I have a little PowerPoint I'd like to run through if that's okay with the board.
Yep, great.
Why don't you use the mic for this? Is this being recorded?
Sure, if you want to go up to the mic, that's fine. And that's a good point, Brian. So this actually came before the Land Planning Committee on, what was the date, Chris?
January 9th.
January 9th, and was recommended for approval by the Land Planning Committee.
Thank you. So I think most of you have already heard a lot of this information, but essentially the university has a shortage of on-campus housing. The university, both the township and Westchester Borough, have encouraged the university to try to maintain on-campus housing to the greatest extent possible. The number of existing university-owned residence halls that are on campus, there's a lot of them that are in need of renovation in the coming years. And so we're trying to provide some temporary housing to address both of those issues, the need for transitional space and the shortfall of on-campus housing. As you said, we did go before the planning committee here and received a recommendation in favor of allowing the temporary housing. And enough to it on that. I'll just go through this PowerPoint to show you what we're talking about. And like I said, I think most of you already know. Let's see if I can get this to...
Power's on the side.
Okay. All right, here we go. That would help. All right, so this shows the overall campus, and you can see in purple on the right-hand side, it identifies lot M1, which is where the university is proposing to put temporary student housing installation. They did look at a lot of different areas where there's existing macadam, where they could put modular units for a small temporary housing installation. And this is a site that the university came up with that's not really adjacent to any direct residences, is sort of out of the way, and is a good spot for this type of an temporary installation. This is an example of some modulars at the Hill School. This is an example of some modulars that were used at Tufts University. This is sort of a common practice around the country to put these kinds of installations in at universities. This was the original layout that we had provided. We got some feedback from the planning committee, and we updated the layout, so I won't spend a lot of time on this one. They're both located, they're both for the M1 lot. So this is the updated layout with some of the buildings reoriented. You can see each of the smaller buildings that are numbered 1 through 20 have 5 units each in them. And then there's the larger building 21, which has 28 beds in it. And then up at the top there, you can see an amenity building, which would have laundry, vending, and things like that. This is a fenced installation. You can see red dots and blue dots. Those are access points around the fencing. And then we have a controlled access up on the northwest corner of the installation to drive pedestrian traffic in the later hours to the High Street corridor to try to ensure that our students are using the High Street corridor for pedestrian access to this facility if they're coming home late at night from the bars or anything like that. So we did that to address a concern that the borough had expressed in the past about trying to avoid driving additional students up through the Walnut Street corridor. So we're addressing that issue. This shows the interior of one of the 5-bed units, singles. Here you get a kind of an idea. They're nice finishes inside. These tend to be very popular with the students at the schools where they've used them. This is the 28, the one building that has 28 beds in it. That's the layout of that building. Again, you see some interior of that larger building. This is the amenities building, and as you can see, it has the laundry, as I mentioned, vending, a study area, a small office. One of the other things at the university, they have a current shuttle bus service, as most of you probably know, and this shows that existing shuttle bus service and route and when it runs. For the current proposal, the university is proposing to add a late night shuttle just to make sure that students uptown have an opportunity to get back to the facility, when the bars let out. We actually talked to the planning committee about extending this to 2:30. Here you can see it says 2 a.m., but I think we're okay with extending it to 2:30 just to make sure we're capturing all of the students who might be coming out of the bars when they're closed. I'll go back to the main layout. So what we had to do is work with your solicitor to develop a text amendment, which obviously tonight we're asking the Board of Supervisors to authorize the advertisement of that text amendment so we can move forward with it. That would allow this temporary student installation. It's limited to 8 years, as we've discussed in the past. We had some different discussions about how to draft that in the ordinance. And I think you have a final version that was issued by your solicitor that we're asking you to move forward with. I'm happy to answer any questions that you have. If we have any details that I can't answer, Michelle and Dave can help us out.
All right, thank you so much, Brian.
Sure.
I don't know if we have a copy of this in our packet. Do you guys have this layout? This is the first that I've seen of this layout.
Correct. That's what I sent that out. I updated that. I sent that out today. This is the layout you had before, and we updated the layout. And really, all it does is it doesn't really change anything other than It moves the building, reorients the buildings. It provides for dumpsters, which is a comment that we got, and you can see that up.
Brian, the bottom button on that is a laser pointer.
Oh,
You can make it larger. Probably see.
so there, you're going to see how bad my.
You're right in larger.
Does anyone want to see a hard copy? We have a
I don't
plan
think
here.
that'll help. I think
Would that help?
It's okay, I can see that.
so. These are the two dumpsters that were added here, and then there you go. And then the buildings were reoriented. This isn't set in steel. We still need to go through. We have to submit full plan sets to Brian to review from an engineering perspective. So neither of the two layouts that you see are set in stone. I mean, we can still work with those. But we were trying to address comments we got from the planning committee. But again, there's going to be a full grading or land development plan set that we'll have ready shortly to submit to Brian to start looking at. And also, I think I saw Andrea here, to look at from fire safety perspective. But we did make some changes to the fencing. So essentially, in between the buildings, we were providing fencing so that students can't go in and hang out in between the buildings. What we did was we fenced across so that nobody can get in there, but we put panic bars so that if somebody has to come out of the buildings, one of those buildings during a fire in between the two buildings, they can get into that little corridor in between the two buildings and hit a panic bar to get out. But you can't go in. For example, maybe some of us in our college days might have gone in there to smoke a cigarette or something. You won't be able to do that.
Okay. I'm a little lost, but I don't know that now's the time that we even have to hash that out, right? Because this is just kind of a concept and
Correct.
is
If
subject to change.
If you agree to move forward with the ordinance and advertise it and submit it to the County Planning Commission, in the meantime, we will have submitted the full plan set to Brian to start reviewing. And obviously, that'll be under review, and this layout will be subject to comment from the township.
Okay, so really tonight what we're looking at is this ordinance that's in front of us. Again, we have the revised version that was provided to us today. I've had an opportunity to ask some questions. Does the board have any specific questions that they would like to ask Brian or our solicitor about this ordinance?
Yes, I have a couple issues. One thing the first thing is on the ordinance, you're asking for 8 years, but yet we have a 5-year plan for the overlay. Why do we need 8 years if the 5-year plan is going to be completed sooner than the 8 years?
Well, the 8 years would be the total life of how long this installation can remain in place because it's temporary in nature. The master plan, the conditional use for the master plan for the entire campus that we expect to be submitting in the fall is actually, once that gets approved, it vests you with the right to proceed with the land development on any one of the improvements shown on the master plan for a period of 10 years. So it's really apples and oranges. This would be something that if we get it approved, if you pass the ordinance and we get it approved, once we put this in, it can only be there for 8 years, whereas the things on the master plan are more long-term in nature.
Okay, I disagree with the 8 years, but something else I'm concerned about is I was a college student at one time, and I'm very impatient to wait for a shuttle at 1 o'clock in the morning. I don't want to wait 20 minutes, a half hour, so I'm probably going to walk. So I have concerns about that also, just because of the nature of being a college student. So, and then we're going to be walking through residential neighborhoods and the safety of it, and being most likely drunk, not always, but could be.
Look, we're going to have additional housing on campus. This is a temporary housing. There will be more housing. It will be in the locations that are designated on the master plan that ultimately gets submitted to this township and to the borough of Westchester. Probably most of that will be in the borough, as you know. So there's going to be more housing. There's going to be students. Not all the students are going to take the shuttles. All we can do is our best to provide a mechanism to try to create an opportunity for those students not to have to walk back. But we're never going to capture all of the students. But we are doing and have been doing more and more to try to manage those issues.
And I appreciate the shuttle. I'm just concerned about the well-being of not only the community, but the students, and, you know, as a result of that. The other thing I had concerns about was parking. We're going to have less parking now at the college as a result of that. Parking's a premium now, so you have less parking. Is there any plans to add additional parking because it's going to be taken away here for the students?
Yes.
Okay.
We have some open parking lots that are going to be designated when this opens. We also we did counts at the peak use period in that entirety M lot. I'll just go back up to the campus plan so you can see. In the parking lots, all in this area, and also in that parking garage is there, we did counts, and we have a surplus of something like 200 spaces in that area now at our peak parking demand. We also have a reserve parking area below the large parking lot that's furthest to the east at that M lot location, where we could put at least another 184 parking spaces. And also, the township could require us to put those parking spaces in if they felt like we had a parking problem. So there's plenty of provisions for parking here, and we don't have a shortage now.
Okay.
Tell them about the letter you're going to write, the memo that you're writing about how you're addressing parking.
Yeah, so during the course of these discussions with your staff and with your solicitor, this question came up. And one thing that I did was I went back and pulled the approved land development plan for the School of Music and also for the EO Bowl renovations that happened in like 2012, 2013. They were approved in 2009, 2010. And I'm going to be submitting to Kristen an analysis of the parking requirements on those plans, the available parking, showing the parking reserve area in the field, and providing the counts that we did to show our surplus parking now. So you'll have all that information in short order.
Okay, and then the last thing I have concerns about, that I haven't seen anything on it, is regarding traffic. Is this going to increase traffic for the residents around there, more cars?
No, this is all students who are already on campus or coming to campus, but we just have a shortage of housing. So we're trying to provide housing for the students. But this in and of itself isn't going to create any more traffic other than the shuttle that we'll be running. Of course, we've added that shuttle. What you'll see when you get the master plan submission, the conditional use application, is a full campus-wide parking and traffic analysis from one of the university's consultants, so that you can see kind of like what our baseline is today and where we're going in terms of all the improvements that are planned that will be shown on the master plan for the next 5 years.
And when is the traffic study going to be completed?
We're hoping to have everything completed and submitted in the fall of this year. What's the name of the firm that's working on the...
Ewing Cole.
Ewing Cole has been engaged by the university to work on the master plan. My office obviously has been engaged to work on the conditional use application, and we're working on all those materials now to get them submitted in the fall.
Well, that's kind of my concern, because we have an ordinance in front of us today, but yet we don't know the full details of the traffic pattern or anything else. So I'm kind of like approving something I don't know when I'm approving.
I would submit to you that this is not impactful in comparison to the master plan, and that the master plan data is going to show you what's going on campus and what's expected to occur. But we don't believe this is going to add anything other than these buildings and the students who are living in them. It's 128 beds.
That's all the questions I have.
Nate, did you have a question?
Yeah, I did. Will this housing be for upperclassmen or freshmen?
I think it's sophomores and up.
Yes.
Okay, sophomores and up. And how many upperclassmen actually live in the dorms?
I'd have to get that number, I don't have it offhand, but I would say about 50% are sophomores and higher.
Okay.
Maybe a little bit less, I have to get back to you.
And have these living arrangements been discussed with any students?
And that campus announcement went out about modular housing, but we haven't wanted to put this concept out fully because we want approval. We have 500 students on a wait list, so we don't want to make it seem like this is going to happen if we have to pull back, so.
The reason I ask that, I have a niece who goes to Tufts University, and she's not thrilled with the modular housing.
Yeah, we understand it's temporary, that housing just goes through this
I
period of
understand.
time.
But for 4 years, if you're there for those 4 years, then you may be stuck.
No student will be forced into it. They can opt not to live in it if they want.
Right.
It won't be forced on anybody, but it'll be available for a student, because we have a lot of students coming from all different socioeconomic backgrounds. This housing is going to be in the more affordable range of the housing that's on campus, maybe not the most affordable, but not the most expensive. And so this provides an opportunity for a student who wants to come to Westchester to come. If they don't want to come because they would have to live in this housing, they can choose not to do that. But we're trying to create opportunities for these students, and also to meet the mission. The statutorily imposed mission of the university is to educate the students in the housing while they're on campus, if they choose to live on campus, and we have to meet that obligation.
I have a question, Mr. Nagel. How many residents live within 1,000 feet of this proposed M1 site where you're looking to put this temporary?
Within 1,000 feet, there might be a couple of houses on Gentle Lane. I would say none other than that.
Would you say 5, 10, 20?
Within 1,000 feet, I would think it would probably fall maybe 5.
Because you're anything north of Rosedale, I mean, you have the Edge, you have the Firehouse, you have.
Can you pull up something, Brian?
Do you mean resident, single-family dwellings, or?
Yes.
Okay, he's talking, but you were talking about apartment.
Yeah, you have the houses on the
With
south
students.
side of,
No,
the house on the south side of the lot.
No, I think Mr. Holland's asking about like people like
Non-university.
non-university residents,
Right, yeah, they have,
In single-family dwellings.
normal people.
yes, the south side of the lot, you have some. And then everything, whatever's north of Rosedale. The other side of Matlack, it's all commercial buildings, the Firehouse at the Edge. The south side, you have some housing below the parking
Yeah,
garage.
can you scroll down so we can see below?
And the north side of Rosedale, you have housing.
There's a couple on Matlock itself. I know one of my friends lives before, like, as you're right past the university, there's a couple single families on the right-hand side, like 2 or 3 homes. I don't know if that's 1,000 feet or not.
Yeah, to get to that, you have to, that's buffered by the entirety of Tanglewood and then across Rosedale Avenue. I'm
No, I'm
not,
talking the other way. I'm talking going towards 202. There's some homes on the right-hand side.
right, and that's what I was talking about.
Behind the
That's
field.
Gentle
Yeah,
Lane.
behind the field.
That's the marching band
Yeah,
behind.
south
Yeah.
behind, right,
So-
south of the field. Right.
So
Whatever's
right
north of
there,
Rosedale.
Brian, I think you got the wrong line. Did you get the whole?
I use this lot right here.
It's M1. That's M1.
That's one.
It's the
It's the
smaller
one below it.
Down
Right
here.
there.
That one right there.
Right, so north of Rosedale and
Yeah.
south of the lot.
so you can see it barely gets across Rosedale.
Right.
And then, can you go down a little? Yeah, it captures, I guess within 1,000 feet, some of those homes on Gentle Lane there would be within 1,000.
north side of Anthony.
It's all go to Lane.
Yeah, this area down here is within 1,000.
Well, the reason why I'm asking is those would be the folks most concerned about this temporary student housing. What kind of buffers are there going to be between them and the temporary student housing would be the concern that I would have.
Yeah, you've got the balance of the parking lot, you've got the parking garage, and you've got the entirety of that field where the marching band practices. So there's a pretty solid buffer there.
I mean, that's certainly something we would address during the land development process. Question is, should we make this be conditioned to use?
So actually, could I say?
Yeah, go ahead.
So I'd like to do a little framing to start with, if it's okay, because I want to rewind the clock 3 years ago, 2021, April time frame. We were trying to work with the university and the borough to come up with a master plan process that was part of developing these overlay districts. Ultimately, at that time, we decided that none of the overlays in West Goshen would include student housing because Mr. Fiorentino said specifically the master plan goal was to have student housing on the super block. And that's what I presume the master plan is working towards. The problem is 3 years have gone by without even starting the master plan. And now you're here with a student housing crisis because of the success of the university, which is great. But the solution for West Goshen, even though we were trying to work with you whether student housing would be good in PUC 4, we never thought that PUC 2 would be a good location for it, which is where this parking lot sits. Because of the fact that we have residents within this proximity to that, the PUC 4 area, which was the Carter Drive, the edge, that kind of general area was a better location. Unfortunately, the borough didn't want to go along with that because, as you mentioned, the potential for more student traffic up through the ward that's on the north side of Rosedale. So here we are 3 years later. We talked with you last year about whether the microtel, that was March, April last year, whether the microtel was a solution, but ultimately you decided that was cost prohibitive for the kind of swing space that you needed.
Correct.
And now we're left with the proposal to convert this parking lot. So having said all that, I'm just trying to point out that this is a problem of your own making, in my opinion. The fact that student housing needed renovation, the fact that you needed more student housing in general has been a problem for over 3 years, and you've only just started the master plan. And then when I looked at the draft ordinance, with an eye towards being sympathetic to how do we make this work to allow some temporary student housing, I see a draft that I believe came from you, Brian, that enabled permanent housing in PUC 2, and it also was kind of pushing it forward without a conditional use process, a by right use of put modular housing in, with an 8-year duration. When the original intention was we want a master plan that we can all review and understand what the housing need is, and the kind of 5-year time frame was acceptable in the sense that, hey, you need a year to do the master plan, maybe a year to get the permitting and the general, the bids and everything else, and a 2-year construction window and another year for a bit of flexibility in that schedule. But now it's 8 years. That's like permanent to me. And the way it's written, after 8 years, you can move them off, get a new modular unit in, and start the process all over again the way this is written. So this could become ultimately permanent swing space for the university. Or if your enrollment numbers change dramatically and you don't want to go ahead with the super block additional dorm, this becomes hey, here's another 28 beds. It's just matching what we need. We can live with this long term. And the burden then is on the township to say, well, you said this was temporary, you need to get it out. And you may well say, no, we need it now. Can't we work with you? And something that had a good intention today becomes a problem. So I want to try to help, but I'm really not happy with the way this is drafted right now. I don't even think we should have a temporary student housing definition. The particular zoning text amendments don't work for me. It should be a conditional use process. We need some way to guarantee this thing is 5 years and then it's out of there. Then I might be willing to support it. That's my personal opinion.
I agree.
5. If we'd started 3 years ago, they could be constructing the beds they needed in the super block at this point.
Brian, what was the logic behind the 8 years?
The logic behind the 8 years was it gave us 2 cycles of a student, so freshman to senior, freshman to senior. That was the idea. I think when we initially discussed it, we were talking about 5 to 7 years. And as we developed, we worked with the solicitor. We kind of went back and forth with drafts to try to get an ordinance, because you can find fault with any ordinance that you draft. They're never perfect. We've been doing this a long time. And you're right, Sean, in as much as we appreciate the township's willingness to work with us. We did have a discussion about the microtel. We weren't able to make that work. We're doing the best we can to manage the circumstances we're in, and you can pinpoint how we got here, but there's a lot of different factors that influence where we are today. All I can tell you is that we've picked the best location we can find. We're trying to work with the township to do it. We have the master plan now finally underway. I know that's been a long time coming. We have a deadline or an expected time frame within which we're going to get that to the township. This is intended to be temporary. This is not a desirable or easy thing for the university to do. This is very expensive and logistically difficult to plan. They're only doing it because they absolutely have to do it. And so if you want to shrink the time frame, that's fine. We can shrink the time frame. But we want to be realistic about it. We don't want to have to come back to the township. Can we make 5 years work? Sure, we can make 5 years work. Right now, we have to be able to proceed with this. We're trying to get students available for these units for the fall semester. That's a very tight window. So if we can, if you want to give instructions to Kristen on changes that you want to make, and then authorize that to be advertised, that's fine. We can do that. But we're really looking for a way to move forward. I don't know that a conditional use gives you an opportunity to review a use that's of a more intense nature than the surrounding uses in the district, and to impose conditions. I don't think there's a need for that here because this is already the nature of the use that's at this location. It's a university, there's students.
It's not though, is it? You don't have student housing in this PUC2 overlay.
We don't have student housing, but we do have an operating university, an operating campus. And this is part and parcel to that, and I recognize.
But it does, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but it does change what happens. You've got people coming and going now closer to the residential neighborhood of our township than exists today. Today it's a facility, it's got the, amenity, it's got things that happen, but it's not a 24/7 kind of living thing next to where we have a residential neighborhood. So it is different. And some conditions would be good. I know you've got an urgent crisis on your hands, but it doesn't mean it's our urgent crisis to just proceed with it and give you what you want.
Understood. I totally understand that, and I'm sensitive to that.
Right now, it's a parking lot. You're talking about putting these modular units in the parking lot. So it's going to change what the parking lot is. No longer it's going to be a parking lot. It's going to be modular units. And it has a certain kind of construction that goes along with it. All the utilities are going to be above ground. You won't be able to be in ground. So it just raises a lot of issues.
The utility part will be dealt with those building code and land development. That's not, I guess I would ask you, and I'm not arguing one way or the other, I'm just asking you, if you were to go to a conditional use, what kind of conditions are you guys worried about? And the buffering stuff will be taken care of in the land development ordinance. So what are some other things that you want to see?
The biggest thing for me, Chris, is maybe not a conditional use. It's the guarantee that this thing isn't there in 5 years' time after the
Well, that
time
we do. And actually, Tom had a great suggestion when he looked at it. He added language that said, and we were using the 8-year, but for no longer than one period of 8 consecutive years. So that would handle it, that's it. It's once and done. We could change that to be 5. I think that addresses that point.
But yeah, that is a minimum to me that we need to be able to say, this is, there's no more student housing here in 5 years' time. One way or another, you've had to address it through some different solution.
Right.
Yeah, and I think it's more than just that. My concern is I don't have enough information to approve this tonight. I don't know the traffic pattern. I don't know what the impacts are going to be. Just hundreds of questions that I can't approve something if I don't have the answers and do a full study before I approve something. I like to study things. I like to see what's involved in it. And I don't feel as comfortable that I have that information tonight.
Well, we had a discussion with the township staff, and I suggested that you could view this as not being a land development. And their perspective was, we'd like to give it land development review. So we're okay with that. We've agreed to submit for land development review through your township engineer and your outside engineers if necessary. So all that could be addressed in that process. I'm not sure that's an ordinance issue.
And I'm also not advocating sort of one way or the other. I guess my question for you, Tina, is what traffic patterns are you concerned about? So these are going to be how many students in this?
128.
128 who will be living obviously on campus. They may or may not have cars. That road is already heavily traversed by students every day going to 202 and driving home. These students are already going to be students at Westchester. I'm just speaking personally. I'm not so much concerned about the traffic. I guess to Sean's point, yeah, if there's a way that we can ensure that in whatever number we choose, time frame, that these modular units are out of there, then look, we live in a very interesting community where it's this dynamic between the borough and West Goshen and the university. And let's not kid ourselves, the university is a thriving, bustling area of education, and it employs a lot of people in West Goshen. It adds to our community in a lot of ways. And the issue here is that rent prices in Westchester are skyrocketing. Kids don't have a way to not live on campus, and the university is growing, like you mentioned, Sean, and it's a really good thing for this area. I think it brings a lot of business here, it brings a lot of people here. But the university's in a position where it can't necessarily grow the way it wants to, and it certainly can't build these student dorms that it wants to overnight. I don't doubt that the university's master plan would like to put more student housing on that super block, and that that's what you're trying to do, and I take the university's word for that. I definitely don't see this as a permanent situation. I don't think they want it. The question is, you know, my husband told a story about this kid that he had in one of his classes who could no longer afford to live and commute back and forth, so he had to leave Westchester University, and it's just, Melanie, maybe.
No, me too.
Oh, okay. Yeah, and so it's a problem that we're not going anywhere, the university's not going anywhere, the borough's not going anywhere. We need to figure out a way to make things work for everybody. And I think if we have this empty parking lot, that if they want to use it for 5 years so that they can build something that houses permanently 150 more students, that being a good neighbor in that respect is what we should do. You have this band that practices on that field all the time. The residents that live there are, and I don't want to speak for them, I don't live there, but I've heard from residents there that they're somewhat used to it. And I guess I don't have a problem with the traffic.
You also have the existing School of Music and the Bowl Center right on this same property. And so if a student's living in this modular unit and going to class in Bowl or going to Soundpack, the School of Music, they're right there. It eliminates the need for them to travel from another part of campus to get to those facilities. So it kind of goes both ways in that respect.
Well, just to elaborate on the traffic area, that's a parking lot, so by 5 o'clock, maybe 6 o'clock, people are gone. It's not used anymore. So this is 24/7, so you are going to have more traffic or people or noise. And again, I have a safety concern too with the shuttle buses.
Tina, as part of the land development, they're going to require to submit a traffic study for their project.
Right, I understand that, which is after tonight.
Kristen, just going back to that question about conditional use. So, for example, would we need conditional use to insist that there's a shuttle bus as part of the, that will be maintained for 5 years? We can do those kind of things.
Yeah, I mean, you're not, don't believe that they could make it and provide that.
I believe that. I do have trust that this is what they want to do, but things change. Budgets get tighter. But once these modules are there and students are in it, well, you can't make us run a shuttle anymore to that location. It adds this much cost. So if we're going to protect some of these things, we need to have it in this conditional use requirements.
Yes, I would agree with you.
Okay.
And how about also buffering between the proposed?
Well, the landscaping ordinance, there's landscaping requirements, I would think, buffering in the SALDO ordinance. So there are things already in your subdivision land development ordinance that when they do their plans, they're going to have to comply with that require buffers.
But in the PUC2 district?
Yeah, it's any subdivision land development, yeah. It doesn't matter on the district.
Buffering's in the zoning ordinance.
Yeah, it's in zoning.
I guess I would suggest there's a lot more work needed to revisit this draft with some of the issues that the board has raised tonight, specifically the fact that, I personally believe it should be a conditional use for the modular student housing. I believe there's some definitions around what this student housing really is, instead of it just being called student housing. We had a lot of angst around what student housing was in that
Well,
last
student
bill.
housing has a definition, so
Yeah.
he wanted to put that in, and I said, we already have a definition.
Yeah.
All that this is different is that it's modular. And then we dealt with the time frame, what the board's comfortable with, whether it's 8 years or not. I would just ask that if you could at least tell us what the gist of the board is on whether you want conditional use or not, because that's
Yeah.
completely
I'm
possible.
still not clear what conditions you want.
Well, like the one that came immediately to mind is this mandate that the shuttle is run as per what was in that slide deck.
Oh, okay.
Well, could we just add that on our land development plan as a required part of the land development?
Kristen, is that acceptable? No.
It would be enforceable if it's on the
Not
plan.
really. Well, it doesn't, well, we could enforce it, but it's not really,
It's not codified, right?
yeah, it's not really related to the development. It's more of a use issue that would be more put in a use order.
I don't really want to hinge our decision about an ordinance on a shuttle when I know that the university already operates shuttles, and I know that it's in their best interest to operate these shuttles. We're also talking about a small pocket now of students, and don't forget about all the other students on campus that they're still having to deal with. And I want to look at this just sort of from what we're looking at in front of it. I don't know if that's enough of a condition for me to say that we should do conditional use, but.
Are the other shuttles till 2? Are the other shuttles till 2 in the morning also? Or are they just during class?
No, there's no shuttle, there's no late night shuttle like that now.
Okay, so that would be something new.
Yeah.
What objection do you have to doing this as a conditional use?
Time.
Just because of money?
Time.
But
Time,
again,
and you could have neighbors come and oppose it. and then
When
they're-
the last time I talked, you met with me, and I forget whether Ashley was there. You met with us, and Chris was there, and he absolutely said, we want to do this right, and if it's not ready for the fall, that's still okay. So to me, that was kind of like, yes, we have an issue and a crisis, and we want to get on with it, but we're willing to work with you with the best process to give us the best shot. To make sure that if we do conditional use, for example, it's not just these one or two things, it's hearing from residents maybe around what issues they would have that might trigger us to say, yes, you should really have a requirement around that. So I hear the urgency, it's your urgency. I have a lot of sympathy for students who can't finish college or are having issues, but I want to balance that against what the residents of this township want us to do, which is to have a hard look at the issues that might arise from permitting this. So that's where I am.
I would
Yeah,
agree
I
with you
understand.
if it weren't temporary. I would agree with you, Sean. I just think the time is not on their side, and I look at this area already and just its use, and okay. So you're for conditional use?
Yes.
Okay.
So,
Sounds like Sean, or John is and David. Okay. so
I am
you're
too.
right. Okay, all right. So, and then I honestly don't think 5 years. I'm concerned that the master planning process is going to take longer than everybody anticipates.
Why?
And then the actual build, because it's two communities, they haven't even done the plan yet. It's 2 municipalities that have to go through 2 hearing processes. You're going to have a ton of neighbors come out. My point, I think it's going to take longer to get through that process. And then, once they get through, that's just the zoning, right? So they get a master plan approved, which is the zoning. Then they have to go through land development for any particular student dorm that they're going to build. Which is another
project,
2 years.
Any project.
Any project. But let's just say the master plan shows a new dormitory or 2 new dormitories being built in the borough. To get the master plan done, which I would say minimum is 2 years, right? From point of submission to get it done. If you get it done in a year, I'd be surprised. Then they have to go through land development for each building. That's not being done in a year. The NPDS permit alone will take you a year. So you're now 3 years out, and they've had these, so then that's only 2 more years that they're going to have these.
Yeah, so I
and
would
then to
do
actually
it for 8
construct
or
them
we
in the
don't
funding.
do it.
I just think 5 years in terms of will it.
Okay.
I'm not saying you can't be concerned and want it to be 5, but realistically, will they be able to get something built? So
Well,
that
if
they
you think about our own projects, sometimes they've taken years, and we haven't even started construction on some of them, so I agree.
Well, I think maybe you start with 5 and you revisit it in 4 years or 5 years, and if it needs to be revised for whatever reasons that are substantial.
Yeah, and that's what I said to Tom, is if it's 5 years and everything's
Yeah.
fine and there aren't impacts, then
Because-
the township can allow extension.
Projects fill up the space available to them. If you give them 8 years,
Right,
it'll
exactly.
take them 4 years to get to we're ready to build something now. So I would like to see some pressure kept on this process because we've already had 3 years wasted in terms of developing a master plan.
I realize that. I'm just saying and I'm not trying to be Brian's health counsel for them, but when it's a university and a government, you probably have other constraints versus a private entity trying to develop. So,
If you're gonna, again, I appreciate the township's willingness to consider this and working with us, and I'm not trying to be unreasonable in the request here. But if you're going to require the university to go through conditional use, which adds more cost, certainly if we start to get into other conditions that we didn't expect, that's going to add more cost and time, then maybe it would be fair to consider a little more time that's reasonable to allow for all those things and to give us time to get our master planning done and approved.
So if we do the conditional use, agree to 8 years.
That's what I'm suggesting. I think would be fair, because now we're going to have to. You're talking about buffers and other conditions, and if we're going to do all that, this is an extremely expensive project for the university already. So that would be my request.
So Brian was raising a potential question. So is it possible to have the time frame as a condition but not have the time in the ordinance?
Sure. Yeah, you do that. I mean, I think I guess it's 6 in one, half a dozen in the other, because if they fail to adhere to that, we're in the issue of sending a notice of zoning violation, whether it's in the zoning ordinance or in a conditional use order, your enforcement mechanism is the same, but does it give you the flexibility to hear a little bit more details and have them present a record as to what time frame they need?
Yeah.
That's not a bad idea.
That's a very good idea.
Yeah,
like it could be 5 years,
yeah.
but it could be further if approved by the
Yeah.
board
Yeah.
as part of the conditional use.
That's fine.
I think that would work.
So we have 2 conditional use issues so far.
So far,
Okay, we can do that.
But if we're going to do that, I guess I'm wondering, I think that covers the ordinance issues, and that could be drafted. I'd ask that the board authorize the hearing to the submission of the ordinance based on approval by the board. Once Kristen gets it drafted, circulates it to the board, and then it can be submitted to the planning commission, and a hearing can be set so we can move forward, so I can get a conditional use application drafted, I can get the plans to Brian, and we can proceed. That's really what we need to do.
Okay, and what does the board think about that? Yep.
Yep. Yeah.
Go ahead.
I'd like to work with you as much as possible,
Yeah,
and if
we
that
just-
works for you, then
I
I'm
think I
ready.
understood. Can you just explain it one more time? What are you asking the board to do tonight?
All I'm asking the board to do is authorize the ordinance be submitted to the county planning commission and a hearing for the adoption of the ordinance be advertised once the board approves Kristen's draft, by email or whatever it might be.
From a time perspective, I think that works. Today's February 20th. If I get this back to you, end of this week, beginning of next, you all tell Chris you're good with it, because that can't be on a reply all, right? You say it's good. I send it to county planning. That gives them a month, and you get us your planning. That gives them a month. We'll still have, we can't schedule the hearing until April 2nd. So you'll have about 10 days where you'll have the county's comments back. And we'll schedule it for April 2nd. You have the hearing on April 2nd, you're not obligated by law to adopt it. You could change it on April 2nd and say we still want additional changes made. So I think there's no risk in going the manner he's asking. If you're good with that.
Okay.
Yeah, so all we're going to do is authorize you to go ahead and rewrite this ordinance.
Right.
And the only real changes are to make it by conditional use,
Yes.
right? And to take out the time frame
Right.
and establish that the time frame will be established through the conditional use decision.
And when do we need to have the conditions for the conditional use?
Not to have the conditional use, to actually have the hearing on the conditional
Yeah.
use.
Okay.
And then after the conditional use hearing is closed, we
Then
have
we can
45
say-
days to render a decision and come up with conditions.
Do we need to
Okay.
vote on authorizing you to do that, or is that?
You don't have to.
Okay.
I mean,
Can it be,
Plus with the point that Tom raised about having a
yeah, we have
absolute
that language in there.
finish of it.
Yeah.
at some
can,
point.
can it be drafted as 5 years, but it can be longer if approved as part of the conditional use? So at least we know we have the baseline
Yeah.
of the 5 years. Is
Yeah.
that fair?
Or have 5 years and the additional extension must be approved by the board?
Well,
I like that language better.
we would do that as part of the conditional use hearing.
Okay, I think that's fine right now.
Okay.
Excellent.
Thank you.
All right, thanks for working with us.
Thanks for working with us. Much
Do you have
appreciated.
any comments? Okay. Yes, some public comments, for sure. Go ahead, Mr. White. I would really like for you to come up there, yeah. Thank you.
Good evening, Doug Wade, 1001 Woodview. Sean made some good points, and when we did this PUC, we worked very hard to figure out these districts and to have the rules changed a little bit. Is a little concerning. Also, is this modular unit going to be behind the Bull Center or between the Bull Center and the new Swope Hall in the parking lot?
Yeah, right next to Matlock Street.
Okay. Okay. That parking lot is used for people coming to the concerts at the Phillips Memorial. Will this mess that up?
No, we've done counts and we don't have any concern about that. We're going to maintain about 70 of the spaces that are there.
Okay. Also, another comment, please. As far as temporary buildings go, they can, Sean has a good point, they can become permanent. I remember Glen Acres Elementary built two temporary 6th grade modular units in 1972, and they were there 50 years. Would it be possible for the Planning Commission to hear this first before any decision is made? Or are we voting on anything tonight?
We're not voting on anything tonight.
Okay.
So the commission will have it.
What the Planning Commissioner is going to say. Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Beth. Steve?
Yeah, it just seems
Do
like.
you want to come up? Thank you.
There was residents that were here last year with my hotel, and now we have another emergency for more student housing, which, hey, I hear their pain, but this is no long-range plan, no short-range plan. It just seems like you're in a crisis and you're doing whatever you can do. I mean, why did you come to the fall or last summer when you weren't looking at the microtel and propose this? Why is it coming up now?
Because the microtel at the time was thought to be the right solution, but it didn't work out. It's not a new crisis, it's the same one.
But don't you look at different plans? I mean, don't just focus on one thing, and I mean, I just don't see.
That was done at the time.
This was done at the time, too.
Look at all different types of options at the time, and we settled on moving forward with the microtel, and the township agreed to work with us, and it just didn't work out, and that happens sometimes.
I just think it seems to be, there's no organization here that seems to be going forward. And the 3 years ago, yeah, I mean, we should have been much further past this.
Thanks for your comment. Are there any other comments? Okay. Is there a comment back there? No? Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much for being here. We appreciate your time. Yeah. All right. Moving on to agenda item number 5, which is the proposal from Carroll Engineering for the North Hills Community Storm Sewer Project. We discussed this a little bit at our last meeting, actually quite at length at our last meeting. And I understand that there was a meeting between some members of the township staff and the North Hills Civic Association on February 8th. Okay. And that you came to an agreement, I guess just sort of a handshake agreement, that the township is going to maintain the new piping and that the Civic Association will maintain the basin.
That's correct, Madam Chair.
It's a proposal.
Okay.
That's what we thought would be a good way forward and to bring to the continued discussion.
Okay.
And that would be in line with how we've handled a lot of the storm sewer projects that we've had, where the easement grants the township the ability to maintain the piping. So that would be in line with what we've done in the past.
And so we have some members of the association here with us tonight. So you feel good about this decision? Are you prepared to take over maintenance of that basin and going forward? Do you have any questions about that? Do you want me to come up? Sure. Thank you.
That's right.
Okay, so hi, I'm Jen Roth. I am the president of the North Hills Civic Association, and I just wanted to thank the township for continuing to work with us on stormwater, and really appreciate your continued cooperation. And It was really helpful for you to meet with us on the 8th, so we met with Sean and John and Chris, which was, and Brian, which was really, really helpful. It was me, it was Jamie Ingram, and Doug Rayner that with you. And so we were able to get a lot of our questions answered, and we feel confident that we'll be able to, maintain the basin as it was described to us, and then we're grateful for you to take over the pipe aspect of it.
Okay. Well, I'm glad you guys came to an agreement. Is there anything that Sean or John you wanted to mention about that meeting? Are you pretty happy with?
Yeah, I thought it was a productive meeting. I think a lot of it was explaining how it all came together, and the concept of how the project will improve both the collection and management of stormwater, but also the intention of the detention basin, and how that, as it sits on the Civic Association property, and what its design was like, and how it could be maintained. Just having that conversation gave everybody a level of comfort as to how it could be something that the Civic Association could understand and manage going forward. There was one post-meeting question that came up relative to the fact that the Civic Association is kind of voluntary. It's not like an HOA. And what happens if there weren't enough funds from that organization to continue to maintain it over time? And the failure of the detention basin would simply mean that whatever silt was still coming down, whatever solids were being deposited in that basin, ultimately over time, if it wasn't maintained, would end up in the actual pond there, which is to the detriment of the residents who enjoy and use that facility. We would just ensure that it was very clear in the easements and the operation and maintenance agreements for these parts of the facility that there was no obligation on the township to step in if that were to occur. It would still ultimately be the responsibility of the Civic Association to deal with whatever problem they created.
Okay. And what are some of the highlights in this addendum to the proposal? I mean, what would you like to bring sort of to our attention?
So, Madam Chair, those are the changes to the general terms and conditions that Ms. Camp had highlighted and discussed at the last meeting. Carroll Engineering has agreed to make all the changes that the township solicitor has recommended. So that would just be an addendum to the contract.
Okay.
Just to be clear, Chris, the information you had in the board packet still showed the conflict between Carroll's proposal, including the inspection services during construction, and then saying, no, it wasn't included. So just to be clear, it is included in the prices quoted in there.
Yes, it is included in the price that's quoted. I apologize for that.
Thank you.
Okay. So the task we have then tonight is to accept this proposal, approve the proposal?
Yes.
Okay.
So I'll make a motion actually to accept the proposed proposal from Carroll Engineering for the North Hills Community Storm Sewer Rehabilitation Project in the amount of $76,600 together with the addendum that's dated January the 30th.
Okay.
I just have one question relative to certifications number 17. If they're doing the work, why would they not certify it? If CEC is doing the work, why would they not certify it? Wouldn't they be required to guarantee the work? Isn't that kind of counterproductive of why you hired them?
But it also says whose existence Carroll Engineering cannot ascertain. So it's
they're not required to certify hidden conditions.
Any
underground thing they're not aware of.
Any unforeseen conditions that they aren't aware of.
Right.
So if they're doing the work, then they're certifying that work. They're not certifying anything they don't know about or that is unforeseen, because they can't really certify its condition.
Okay.
Do you have any other questions, Tina?
No, I'm good, thank you.
How about you, Nate?
I'm good.
Good? Okay, so you have a motion and a second. Is there any public comment on this proposal? Yes.
Tina, while Doug's coming out, I need to amend my motion for a not to exceed amount of $76,600.
Okay, amended motion. John, do you second?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
So that is what it stated, that is.
That's not what I said, though.
Not to exceed.
This is a not to exceed previously discussed.
Okay, so I'm Doug White, 1001 Woodview. So the township will pay for this, but then not maintain it, correct?
We will, so we have a grant that's going to pay for the construction, a large portion of the construction. The $76,600 not to exceed is to hire Carroll Engineering to perform the bidding.
The construction documents, handle bidding, and do construction oversight.
Bidding and construction services.
Okay, so,
But once it's built, the township is going to maintain the piping, and the North Hills Civic Association is going to maintain the basin where the silt is going to gather.
okay, is the pipe connected to any township streets?
Yes.
Yes.
It goes underneath West Penn.
Okay, and then would this create a precedent for other residents in the township that has stormwater pipes on their property that connect to this public streets to then have the township come and
Well, the precedent's already set.
So we already do it now. We already,
Projects.
yeah.
okay, thank
It
you.
all the other properties.
Doug, it's based upon the easements.
Exactly.
We have, the precedent has been established in other projects where easements have been established
Right.
for the new pipes.
And this would be treated in the exact same manner.
All right.
Right. Thanks for your question. Any other questions? Okay, hearing none, let's take a vote. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All right, motion passes 5-0. Thank you. Thank you guys so much. And thank you, Brian and Sean and John and Chris for meeting with them, figuring this out. It's really great. All right, so moving on to item number 7 is the discussion and possible approval of resolution. Did I skip one? Yes, sorry. Item number 6. The discussion and possible approval of a proposal from Keystone Fire and Security for upgrades to the fire alarm system in the West Goshen Township Streets Department facility. Chris, would you like to introduce this?
Yes, Madam Chair. So before the board this evening is a proposal from Keystone Fire and Security for upgrades to the fire alarm system in Building D, which is our streets department facility. This upgrade is necessary to the high number of false alarm calls that have been occurring in this location. The total cost is $10,035.21. While this expense, it was not budgeted, funds are available in the general fund in the 2024 budget for repairs and maintenance. Speaking with our facility superintendent, Mike Cacovo, the work would involve removing the existing compressor, which is mounted on the drag piping, and then replaced with a floor-mounted compressor and an air maintenance device. As a result, the electronic accelerator will be removed, which is what's causing the system to trip and cause a high volume of false alarm calls. So this will address that problem. I did have the solicitor review this as well as the conditions. She did have some recommendations related to changes. We have forwarded those to Keystone and are waiting the revision. However, I think if the board is comfortable with it, we can approve this proposal because it will address a long-going issue.
Okay. Does the board have any questions about this proposal to replace this piece of equipment?
Yeah, so is replacement of the existing air compressor the only solution to solve this nuisance alarm?
Based on Keystone's analysis, yes.
Okay.
And in speaking with Mike, the way the system was originally designed, it never should have been installed where it was.
How many alarms are going off from this? Do you know off the top of your head?
Enough to say that we should be finding ourselves. that is what Andrea has told me.
Oh my gosh, we should be finding ourselves if that's the case.
What is the maintenance fee for upgrades and various other things compared to what we have now on an annual basis?
I don't know the answer.
I'm just wondering if it's going to increase as a result of the new system or if it's going to be the same.
I don't believe so. The whole goal of this is to reduce any sort of maintenance and any sort of calls that are coming out there. That's the goal. I can't answer that though off the top of my head.
Okay, I'm just wondering, software updates and things like that.
All right.
One other question, actually.
Okay.
The line item in the budget, is it actually just a placeholder with a dollar amount, or was it earmarked for some other specific maintenance items that this will now cannibalize?
There were specific items that were earmarked in there. So this will eat forward a portion of that. I think the total allocation, I don't remember off the top of my head, but this was not allocated in there. And if you look in the budgetary detail, there were specific projects outlined in there.
So when we do a mid-year budget review, this will be an added to the expense?
Yes. But I would condition any motion on, I would recommend conditioning any motion on the board satisfying the comments from our solicitor.
Absolutely, yeah. So is there a motion then to approve this proposal, understanding that they need to satisfy the comments of our solicitor?
So moved.
Thanks. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Nate. Is there any public comment on this proposal? Okay, hearing none. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0. Now we're moving on to item number 7, which is discussion and possible approval of resolution number 8-2024, authorizing the destruction of certain records of West Goshen Township pursuant to the Pennsylvania Municipal Records Manual. We do this, do we do this every year?
We do this a few times a year.
Okay.
Depends on how much stuff we want to get rid of.
So this is within the finance department.
Yes, Madam Chair, this resolution that's before the board is specific to the finance department, and it's in accordance with Act 428 of 1968.
And these are paper records?
That's correct.
Yeah.
Is there any electronic backup of these records?
I believe for like for the UB receipts, yes, they would be stored in our financial system.
So even though the paper copy is being destroyed, there isn't a complete and total erasure of these documents, is that correct?
That's my understanding, yes.
Okay, are there any questions from the board?
I mean, one thing that is being, is on the list is police reports, which sounds fairly generic from 2016. Is that that's what, 7 years old? Is that a typical length of time we retain those records?
That might be an error.
Yeah, I don't think much, but it will be, but I don't think it's ready yet.
I believe that might be an error. That might be a holdover from an old version.
Okay,
Because I did query the other departments and no one was in time for anything yet. So the finance department was the only one that was ready.
Yeah, you're right, Sean. They do that separately with the police department destruction, so that's a good catch. So let's look at that and then.
Well, I think you can approve the resolution
Yeah.
that can remove what's
Yeah.
being destroyed.
Yeah. Okay. Is someone willing to make a motion then to approve resolution 8?
I'll second.
Okay, thank you, Nate. Thank you, Tina. Is there any public comment on this? Mr. Gold?
This is only financial records.
Yes, the financial, from the finance department, yes. Mr. Gold?
So I looked at that this afternoon and I noticed that it's going to include years 2016 to 2021.
2022, but there's one listed 2022.
Okay, 2022. So my concern is that it's not digitized, and with the Dave Woodward case, there may be financial records in there of how overtime, comp time is handled, time sheets and whatnot. That would be my concern, is that somebody goes to ask for these records during this year, and these records up to 2022 have been destroyed. So what I would suggest is not destroying records up to 2022, something much less. It can be 2016 for a few years, but I don't think we're ready to destroy financial records up through 2022.
There are no payroll records as part of this. These are all utility billing records.
Okay. Well, thank you.
Thank you for your suggestion. Any other comments? No? Okay. We'll take a vote then. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All right, motion carries 5-0. Moving on to discussion item number 8, which is the discussion and possible approval, discussion and possible authorization to advertise a proposed amendment to the Chapter 60 peddling and soliciting of the West Goshen Township Code of Ordinances. So I don't know who wants to speak to this, and I actually have a question of how this came to our attention to begin with.
That was me.
Oh, so you brought, okay.
Yeah, our HOA actually brought it to the attention. We had some solicitors and some of them were very aggressive. So I actually contacted the chief and asked him what the policy was, and it was a very short policy. It was on his slate to be updated anyway. And I appreciate all the time and work you put into that because the final document is excellent. So I'm very pleased with it, and I appreciate the time you put in. So, and I think you had one other thing that kind of tipped you to go do it a little, if you want to talk about
We had some
that.
recent issues with solicitors, and the enforcement on the old ordinance was that civil penalty, which doesn't do well for us, so we asked that it goes to a criminal penalty so we can handle the enforcement. We made a couple of changes as far as solicitor. If you have a permit and you go to a property that's marked, go solicit, you can't go then solicit.
Right.
And Kristen wanted some changes to the issuing of the permit as far as criminal history, to weed out the minor criminal history, to allow you to get a permit.
Yeah.
So that, oh, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
So that also, because it's a criminal penalty versus civil now, they increase it from $50 to $1,000.
So where in the ordinance is it changing it from civil to criminal?
I don't have the ordinance in front of me.
It's in section 3. It's actually section 60-7 of the current ordinance. It doesn't use the word criminal, but under the St. Clair Township Code, if you go criminal, you're allowed to go to a fine of $1,000.
Actually, it does say criminal in 60.7, and it automatically increases it. And I think the biggest thing is that in the past, they could still solicit anywhere, as long as they had a permit, and it was approved by the police, whereas now, if there's a sign that says no soliciting, then they can't. So that's mainly the big difference here.
So can I just ask a question about that? So quite often people have those no soliciting, no this. Either at the door or around the side, it's not always immediately visible to someone coming up and ringing the doorbell. If you have an aggressive homeowner who says, you've solicited my home, I'm upset that you're here, what's the process for, well, I didn't see your sign?
It's a great question. I mean, there should be language that says it has to be visible.
So it would be any other crime that gets reported to us. The officer would go out and deal with it on a common sense basis. If it's not visible, we're not going to enforce that with a fine.
Okay. So I guess what I should suggest then in section 2G, maybe we should say the owner has displayed a visible no solicitation sign, and then when you have an HOA, the same thing.
That's certainly up to the board. But I
I
can't
mean,
assure
saying
you-
displayed a no solicitation sign, you would think that would encompass displaying it, but
We can't write something that covers all of the permutations of what a sign might be and how close it is to where someone sees the front door, right? It's just impossible to write it. It could be visible, but it could be 20 feet away, It's like, it's down to the common sense of whoever's responding to the complaint.
I mean, I would
Our
assume.
goal is certainly not to hand out fines, it's to keep
Yeah.
bothersome solicitors away from us.
Yeah.
And then, Mike, walk through the process for me in the event you do have a violator. Is it the resident that's going to be calling you, and then what would the process be?
Well, anyone can call us and tell us about a violation, we would respond out and investigate.
Right, okay.
Does canvassing for political campaign qualify as
No,
soliciting?
that's exempt. There's certain exemptions.
So if they call you and you come out and there's clearly a sign there that says no soliciting, you say to the person, did you see the sign? We have an ordinance about this. Is it like a warning?
That's a good question. I would start with. It's up to the officer at the time.
Okay.
Again, our goal is to limit the behavior. It's not to fine.
Okay.
They would make that decision.
So just to walk through it for a minute, somebody comes to my door, solicitor, he violates it, I have a sign up, I've done everything I'm supposed to do to not allow this person to come. Then I call the police, but I don't know his name, I don't know anything about him, so how? Oh, good. Okay, so I don't have to know any of that information. Okay, I like that.
Okay.
And just to follow up with Nate's comment, this does not apply to political solicitation, door knocking, but also, this also would not apply to religious organizations.
Correct.
There's a list of exempt behaviors.
Well, that's actually not included in the exemption.
This is only if you have a soliciting permit or required to get one.
Right, and you have to be selling something or asking for contributions in order to have to get a permit from my reading of this.
I mean, I know you be a realtor going door to door, asking people to use you if you sell your house. That would be soliciting.
Right. If somebody's there handing out a political piece of literature or something like that, that would not be considered.
No.
There's a whole list of exempt things that are exempt.
And that's is that a federal
Typically, it's
law?
items that are protected by the First Amendment.
Exactly, so it's like a constitutional line. Okay, great. All right, well, Tina, thank you for looking into this. Thank you, Chief, for assisting with this. And thank you to Kristen, even though she's not here. All right, so is there a motion?
I would like to make that motion.
Okay.
Since I made the motion.
Yes. Is there a second?
Second.
Thanks, Nate. Is there any comment from the public on this? Yes, Mr. White.
I just wanted to thank John, Mr. Hellman, for mentioning the door knocking, which is important to meet the candidates, and also for the religious information. I think that's important. Even though we're Jewish, I like hearing from the Mormons and the Seventh-day Adventists. We always have good conversations. Thank you.
Very good, thank you. You got a question? Yeah, come on.
Good evening, Ken Falkenstein, 317 Tarbert. So I'm a resident. I just wanted to express my support for the proposal and appreciate you bringing this, and that's all.
Thank you.
Thank you. And your neighbor.
All right, great. So we have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All right, motion passes 5-0. Okay, item number 9. The discussion regarding a request from Eastside Little League for a reduction in their annual fee for use of baseball fields owned by West Goshen Township. Mr. Bayshore, would you like to introduce this discussion?
Certainly, Madam Chair. So before the Board of Supervisors this evening is a request from Eastside Little League for a reduction in their annual fee for the use of certain baseball fields owned by the township. By way of background information, at the March 7th meeting, the board approved a new 5-year lease agreements with various leagues for use of the baseball fields at West Goshen Community Park and Cloud Park. The agreements outlined an annual lease payment to the township of $5,000. Eastside Little League intends to replace the shed at Cloud Park that is used for storage and is requesting that the board consider a $1,000 reduction in the lease amount to assist in offsetting the cost for the league. Provided a letter from the president of the league, Matthew DiGiulio, outlining the request that's before the board.
All right, thanks very much.
And I believe Mr. DiGiulio is here this evening, in case there are any questions.
Okay, great. Thanks for coming. So I assume the board had a chance to read this letter and understands what Eastside Little League is requesting. Are there any comments or questions from the board for Mr. DiGiulio?
I have one question, just for clarification. Are you asking for a $1,000 reduction for 1 year, one annual year fee?
For just this year.
Just for the 1 year?
Correct.
Okay. Okay.
Well, I'll share my thoughts. I think that's something that we can do. I see us as partners with Eastside Little League. I think we've had a good partnership for many years. And obviously, this is going to be an amenity that's going to be replacing something that's existing that's obviously falling into disrepair.
Correct.
And so I think that the township can work with you on that for this 1 year. That's my position.
My position is I agree. My husband coached in Eastside Little League for 17 years, and it's a great organization. And any way we can help the community, including that league, I'm all for it.
I agree. Anything that helps kids get off their video games and out of their house and do something that's community-oriented and fun is a good thing to encourage. And if it needs a little bit of help to get the facilities in the shape they need to be, I'm supportive of it. Just the one question I have is your request just for West Goshen, or is there any other townships that you need a little bit of money from?
So we've made requests, primarily our constituents are West Goshen and West Town. So we use Oakhorn Park and West Town. We've made requests of both. Frankly, we've asked more of Westtown just because there's more players within Westtown that fall in the east side of the league. But just to give you a basis, we're going to spend a little over $100,000 this year to improve our facilities across the entire league. Part of our issue is as the community grows, which is a good thing, I've lived here my whole life, there's more and more kids, right? So our leagues are growing. We don't have enough fields. We're constantly pressed for field space time. So that's why we're dumping a ton of money into our facilities to help overcome some of the weather challenges, things that we face throughout the season. This is one of them, Cloud Field, if you're familiar with it. It's kind of on a downslope. A lot of the infield dirt tends to track out of there. The current shed doesn't enable us to keep a true groomer there, so we're moving a groomer piece of equipment over there to a new shed to allow a better maintained field, which should be a benefit not only to us, but frankly to the township. Should lead to less dirt needing to be dropped there annually to try to keep that field level and safe.
Great, thank you.
Where are you getting your funding for these special projects?
So it's a combination of raising funds within the league, raising funds within the small business community, which I'm pretty affluent within, and then we're starting to look at grant money as well, not specific to this, but to look at facilities. And that's one of the requests I want to put on the agenda tonight. I'm talking to Marie about is to look at areas within the township to help, the Little League in general and sports associations to find ground within the master plan. Because the reality is, while we have facilities in place, they're maxed out, frankly. And so my job as the president of Little League, and I'm talking with other organizations that are facing the same challenges, is to try to find more land. That's one of the things we want to talk to both Westtown and West Goshen about. Is just in the overall planning, as you guys look at development, passive and active recreation within the community, to keep that in mind, because that's one thing that's going to be needed going forward. Maybe not in the next year or two, but project out 5-10 years, I can see us having a lot of issues. Right now, just to give you an idea, we've got over 100 kids on our wait list just to get it. We're renting a school facility, we're doing all kinds of different things. It is a volunteer organization that gets paid. There are some sports associations out there that are for pay, but Little League's not. So we're constantly looking at our plan and raising funds, quite frankly, privately. And so any help that the township provides is instrumental to Little League's success.
While you're here, I have a
Sure.
question, and I want to kind of pose this to the board as well. We recently adopted a ban on the neonicotinoids, correct? We passed that?
On township-owned property.
On township-owned property. So does Eastside Little League maintain the fields?
So we maintain Marchfield, which we own, Cooper Field, which is down the street. We maintain Westchester Sports Association, Carmen Field, that's off 202. We sort of maintain Cloud, although the township cuts it. And we kind of maintain infield, if you will. And then for Oakbourne, we maintain those fields within Westtown Township. That's sort of how we operate.
Okay, and I don't expect you to know this off the top of your head tonight.
Yep.
But I don't even know if you were aware that we passed this a couple of weeks ago. So we passed a ban on a certain insecticide that contains neonicotinoids to be used on township property.
Got it.
Okay. So I guess I would say that.
Yeah, we passed that to so Windview Athletics is who does our treatment.
Okay.
They also cut our fields. We're starting to cut some of our own fields, but we don't treat any of our own fields as volunteers, to say that.
Okay.
So it's something I can pass on to Windview.
Yes, so it's incredibly important that if any insecticides, any chemicals are being used by you guys on our fields, that you adhere to that.
So that would be Cloud. So Cloud, they don't maintain. I'm just thinking out loud. And Carmen.
But it could be a little bit more expensive.
Understood. What I would ask is have Doreen send me what the ordinance was that was passed.
Yeah.
I can provide it to Windview and then confirm that if they use it, that it's not being used on any township property that we use.
We've extended it to our third-party contractors also that we use. So we always internally did not use them, but some of our contractors were. So now we've changed that. Our contractors plus internally will not be using that anymore.
Understood. I don't believe we do, but I'm not 100%. Like I said, if you provide that, I'll make sure that they...
You can work with Doreen and, you figure it out.
Especially with the kids playing there. They don't want any chemicals,
No, we try to do everything organic that we do, but...
Okay.
Matt, Doreen has the information on the product list that would be prohibited, as well as what our vendor is switching to.
Got it. So I'll see that.
And lastly, I want to say thank you for being president of the Little Leagues. I know it's not an easy task. And there's a lot of parents you have to deal with, so thank you.
I appreciate it.
Sure, it takes a lot of your time, too.
Yeah.
That's actually what my kids are in it, so you do what you put into it.
I'm still trying to convince my 6-year-old to sign up. Maybe this will be like next year, hopefully.
Next year, yeah.
All right, so is somebody willing then to make a motion to agree to allow the Eastside Little League to reduce their payment from $5,000 to $4,000 for this year in order to fund the replacement of the shed?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
All right, thanks very much. Is there any public comment on this motion? No. All right, hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries 5-0. Thank you so much, Matt. for being
Thank
here.
you, appreciate your time.
Item number 10, discussion regarding members on the pension committee. Now this, I understand, so we have 6 members. Oh, sorry, we have 5 members and 1 alternate member. And what's being discussed is that the alternate member, Charles Creighton, would like to switch roles with Mr. Walker Tompkins so that Walker Tompkins would become the alternate member and Charles Creighton would become a member.
That is correct, Madam Chair. It's essentially a reshuffling of the deck, so to speak.
Okay.
And this came up at the January 24th Pension Committee meeting from Mr. Tompkins.
So just a little bit of background. So Walker has been on the pension committee for some considerable time, and he had helped recruit Chuck as an alternate member. At this point, Chuck's been attending the meetings for over a year, probably now, I think at least a year, and Walker would like to swap roles with him so that Chuck is now a kind of voting member of the pension committee as we continue the RFP process, and Walker can maybe skip a meeting if he feels like it.
Okay. And so this needs approval, like a formal vote by the board to approve this switch?
Yes, Madam Chair.
Okay, so then, Sean, are you willing to?
Yeah, I'll make the motion to swap Walker Tompkins and Chuck Creighton for Walker to become the alternate member and for Chuck Creighton to be the member of the pension committee.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, thanks, Nate. Is there any public comment on this switch?
I just have a question. You mentioned about the RFP process for getting another consultant. Where are we at with that?
The RFP was issued to, I want to say, 15 firms. We've gotten, their deadline is February 29th in which to respond. We have had 2 firms decline to respond.
Great. Okay, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries 5-0. All right, item number 11, report for the month of January 2024. Look at the police report presented by Chief Michael Carroll.
Thank you. Report from the police department for January 2024. We responded to 2,156 calls for service. 54 of those were alarms, and 4 of those alarms were found to be valid. We responded to 72 accidents, 23 of which were reportable, and we drove a total of 24,102 miles. We performed extra traffic enforcement on Westchester Pike, West Warren Road, Grove Road, South Five Points Road, South Ashport Drive, Rosary Lane, Lincoln Avenue, Sunset Hollow Road, and Westtown Road. And in training, we did our normal monthly trainings. In addition to that, Officer Boyle attended an FBI media, which is a leadership course, and Officers Ash and Virgilio attended MIXAP, which is motor carrier safety training. Of the alarms I mentioned earlier, none of they were either first or second violations, this being the beginning of the year, so none of those resulted in fines. We assisted other departments 15 times for a total of 6 hours, 6 3/4 hours, and received 25 assists from other departments. And that's what I have for the initial report, but I'm certainly happy to answer any questions.
All right, thank you, Chief. Does any member of the board have a question for Chief Carroll?
I have a question. Chris Boyle Consulting Legal Updates, is that some kind of specialized legal counsel?
It is. He's does work for Divot, so he's an attorney that provides any changes, and he provides a monthly training, 1 hour every month that we can view online. Each officer can view online. It gives you updates to all the case law that occurs.
Thanks.
One of the vehicles is being replaced this year for patrol, I believe. And we talked about it at our livestock meeting. you have looks like a good solution here as far as getting a Ford Mach-E, I believe it is.
That's correct.
Why don't you talk about that a little bit, about
Sure.
why you feel that that would be possibly a good replacement?
So last year, we intended to replace one of the traffic vehicles with an electric vehicle. And that kind of fell through when the vehicle we chose to do it with wasn't pursuit rated. Wasn't, at least according to the manufacturer, didn't rise to the level. So this year, to try and make up for that loss, we're looking to replace a vehicle from the juvenile unit, which will be fully outfitted for patrol, but not necessarily used that way. But it will give us the opportunity to employ it when the juvenile unit isn't using it for patrol to see how it performs. So we've chosen the Mach-E, although it doesn't carry the same designation as pursuit rated that some of the other ones do. It was tested by the Michigan State Police, who are one of the two large agencies in the country that test vehicles, and given that acceptable rating, it did pass the Michigan State Police test.
So the vehicle that you were talking about earlier that was kind of underperforming for the use that we hoped it would be using?
It wasn't necessarily underperforming, it just didn't get that grade from Ford.
It was was it a hybrid?
No, it was
fully electric?
It was a range issue, right? The detectives, if that go to Harrisburg, were a little concerned
So
about
range
it.
is an issue on all these cars, but this specific. So Ford and different manufacturers will put pursuit ratings on their police package vehicles, and it's for different reasons. Mostly it's a braking suspension setup. So when Ford specifically didn't do it, we had concerns about using it for patrol.
In terms of the use for the vehicle in juvenile duty, I mean, what's the longest trip that vehicle might have to make? Are you going to end up with any concerns about range capability for that?
So for normal juvenile usage, I don't have any concerns at all, but it'll give us the ability, because they, generally speaking, it'll be used during the day for them.
Yeah.
We can take it out for night shifts or when weekends and use it for a full patrol shift to see what the results are.
Okay.
Which vehicle is it that's being replaced? Is it 5203? Do you know?
I'd have to go. I have no idea. I'll have to look.
So what's the timeline on that, getting that? Did you place the order for it yet?
So we have sent the order to Ford. We haven't heard back them telling us they received it or information on timeline. So I don't know.
And it's going to be a little more expensive than the gasoline.
It is right now. It's about $5,000 more than the gas-powered Interceptors, but we have a little money left over in the upfitting of the earlier vehicle. So I'm hoping we can do it without any adjustment on our overall budget. But certainly, if it comes to that, I'll come back to the board.
Go ahead, Nate.
Chief, it looks like we drove a lot more miles last month than the month before. Do you have more cars out there, or?
So it's probably not a more cars issue, but it could have been more people working or the weather. They're usually probably two of the biggest factors. If more people are working, we drive more miles, or if the weather's nicer.
Chief, can you give us an update on the recruitment process with the two patrol officers?
Yes.
Or say one additional and no replacement?
After the interview process, we ranked them, and currently we're doing background checks on the two top candidates. I hope that to be completed this week, which we will then, assuming everything goes, we'll be able to offer jobs to both candidates.
And you have a target hire date of end of the first quarter, or?
My goal would be to bring the two before you at the March 9th. I think it's March 19th, the second meeting in March.
In the event these two candidates or one of the candidates don't make it through the background check, do you have an alternative that you already interviewed and you're happy with?
Yes, there's several, yeah.
Okay, good.
And also, can you comment on the vetting process for replacing Sergeant Taylor?
So that's something we'll deal with once we get on board for the two new officers. We'll talk about
So
that.
that'll be something to later on in the year?
Correct.
Just to push you a little bit on that, would you envisage a similar process where a couple of people try out in the role and you evaluate them like you did with the lieutenant position?
I do not envision that, no.
Any other questions for the chief? No? Good. About from the public, any questions for Chief Carroll? No?
Well, just a follow-up question. You had the opportunity to take a tour of the Haven Behavioral Health Center.
I did.
Can you tell us a little bit about that?
So yeah, we met with David Klein, who's I believe he's the CEO, director, and he was the former director of Brandywine Hospital's unit. So he has a lot of experience in the area. He definitely provided us with good information on how I think he's going to be able to help the police department in the issue with behavioral health calls. Contrary to what we were given earlier in the process, they will be able to take direct as opposed to coming through the ER. Any patient that voluntarily agrees to go, which is a lot of people we deal with from time to time, but now our only outlet is the ER. So the ability to take them direct to Haven, I think, is going to help us with our time commitments a lot.
Do you think with the Haven Behavioral, they're still going through the vetting accreditation process, I guess?
Correct.
We should say. Right now, I think there was only 7 patients there. They have to provide care for them for a certain period of time.
So they have to admit so many, and I don't use the word graduate, but
Discharge them.
thank you. That's the word I was
Yes.
looking for. Discharge them. I think the discharge number was about 30 patients to get to the next level.
Right.
So right now, their max they can accept is 12 until they get to that next level.
Well, what I'm getting is, I mean, once they are up and fully running, do you think there'll be less of a drain upon the resources of the West Goshen Police Department to deal with service calls going to the hospital?
That's my hope.
Okay.
Haven's not in West Goshen.
Yeah, where is that? Where is it?
Westchester.
It's in Westchester?
It's right across the street from the hospital. It's in the borough.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
Stay tuned.
Okay.
Indeed.
Great. Well, thank you to you.
You're welcome.
Okay, moving on to item 12, Board of Supervisors announcements. I'm going to start to my left with Nate. Do you have any announcements?
Yeah, January 25th, attended a Historic Commission meeting, and then a follow-up meeting on February 8th with John Hellman, meeting with Steve Lyons of the Historic Commission. The topic there was preservation of historic sites. And then today, attended a meeting with the HR consultant.
All right, thanks, Nate. How about Sean? I'm going to jump over this way. Mr. Walsh.
I have 3 things. One is, as was mentioned earlier, we met with residents and representatives of the North Hill Civic Association on February 8th. We conducted a meeting there, as we heard earlier. On Thursday, the 15th of February, I attended the Solar Array Project pre-bid meeting here at the Township. It was a kind of interesting event. And there's one other thing I just want to comment on, because not everybody knows about it, but it's certainly worth making a public comment on, is that at the end of January, we received our debt rating from the agency, KBRA rating. And I just want to read a couple of sections out on that. So the rating was a AA+ with a stable outlook, and the rating summary says the long-term rating reflects the inherent strength of the township's full faith and credit pledge, effective management structure and adopted policies, strong underlying resource base, and substantial financial flexibility afforded by the township's ample reserves and cash position. The credit positives were strong financial management structure and policies, including conservative budget practices and formal reserve balance policy, a history of ample unassigned general fund balance and liquidity, and stable residential tax base with good commuter access to large, diverse employment centers supporting strong wealth and socio-economic indicators. So, very positive review, and I think it's a credit to both everyone on the staff who manages their budgets and expenses, and also to say Board of Supervisors and the way we manage things too.
Well done, all around. I'm sorry, is it a double or triple?
AA+.
AA+. That's great news. Always great news. Is that what we had last year as well? Yeah.
It's been consistent for the last few years.
Yeah, excellent. Great, thanks. Thanks, Sean. Nope, go ahead.
On February the 7th, on Wednesday, I attended a webinar on grant opportunities offered by the Pennsylvania Department of Health. It was called WalkWorks Grant Program, and that they provide funding for plan development of walkways. It's something that I'd like to have some discussion further with the board and the staff about how we might be able to pursue some grant opportunities from that area. On February the 8th, on Thursday, I met with residents along with Sean of North Hills to discuss the proposed stormwater project, which we've discussed that. It was a very good meeting to hear the concerns. February the 14th, on Wednesday, Tina Maureen, Smith, Chris Fisher, and myself met with the Chester County Commissioner, Josh Maxwell, also the Director of Human Services, Pat Buckowitz, and the Mental Health Deputy Administrator, Candy Craig, to discuss several county initiatives regarding mental health. They actually have a 3-tier program they are pursuing right now. They have a 988 call-in, which has been around for a while, but they're trying to coordinate the 988 call-in along with these other initiatives that they're going to be starting in the very near future, namely the mobile health unit. There's going to be 3 units within Chester County, and it's going to be a 24-hour operation. They're going to be mobile, and if somebody calls into 988 with a mental health crisis, this unit will be dispatched to that location. Whether or not there will be police involved or not, initially there will not be. They made it a point that they do not want to have the police involved initially for any response to a mental health call, but the need may arise. So we're going to pursue how this is going to be actually implemented as this gets rolled out. We're looking at having a meeting set up with our chief of police and with also Tina Marie and Smith and myself to have further discussion with the county on this mobile health unit, how that's actually going to work. And the third tier of their mental health initiative is the Behavioral Health Center, which is being, we already discussed, in the process now of going through accreditation. So the county is spending a lot of time and money and effort on mental health, which I think is a very good thing, very good initiative. And we want to do whatever we can to support them in these efforts. And one thing we certainly can do would be to advertise the 988 emergency call availability on our website, as well as some of these other initiatives, as they become available. More on this. On February the 15th, Tina Marie and Smith and I met Chief Carroll for a monthly board liaison meeting. And afterwards, that same day, I attended the Chester County Grant Opportunities Municipal Grant Program, Chester County Parks and Preservation Municipality Grants, which we received quite a good amount of money from them this year towards the West Goshen Township Community Park. Just a learning experience for me about how they operate. Yeah, that's all I have.
All right, thanks, John. I just have a quick question. Are you going to be involved heavily in that discussion with the county about responding with this 988 stuff?
Probably.
Okay.
Well, the answer is yes.
Yeah. I think that's going to be a very interesting discussion. Okay. Go ahead, Tina.
Okay. Just a few things. On 25th, I attended the COG meeting. We talked about some interesting things. One of them was potentially bringing trash and waste in-house. We talked to Mark about it. That was one of the, there were a couple townships that were considering that right now, and they asked if West Goshen would be interested in that, and Mark said yes, he would be interested in having that conversation. They looked into that several years ago. It just didn't pan out, so he's interested in that conversation again. Don't know where it's going to go, but he wants to have it.
In-house meaning what's trash?
Our own.
Our own trash.
Yes.
Like the borough is in-house,
Yeah.
correct? So they collect their own trash and then take it to, I guess, the Lanchester landfill. So
Right.
what's being proposed?
So
we would have our own fleet.
they have their own fleet of trash trucks to maintain
Yes.
it.
And there's a couple other townships that also have that.
I think at the December COG meeting, because you just took over COG, I
Yeah.
think when we were at that, when I was at that meeting, there was just also a discussion maybe of
Generated from a lot of the issues that many of our neighboring municipalities are experiencing with one particular trash hauler. I won't name names. And those municipalities said they're interested in learning more about how this operates. So right now, the ones that I'm aware of that do in-house trash collection are obviously Westchester Borough, I believe Phoenixville Borough does theirs, and West Bradford Township. So what we talked about doing was doing a special educational session to kind of understand how that would operate and what everything would be involved, what would be involved with that. Now, we're in the middle of a 5-year contract with Republic right now, but I do think in talking to Mark, he would be interested in learning more about it. And as Ms. Smith indicated, it had been discussed previously, like Mark said, 20 years ago, maybe more than that. He was actually supposed to run the whole operation, but it was determined at that time to be more cost effective to contract it out versus bringing it in-house. So, but he is interested in learning more about it.
So, sorry to keep going on the same subject, I'm curious, so would the intention be similar to like fire service where we have a contract with the borough? Would we have a contract with the borough for trash pickup on a couple of days a week, or would this be some kind of collective new agreement where we pool pull together to share costs and operate this as a collective municipality thing?
TBD.
Yes,
Okay.
exactly.
That's a
It's
very
all
good
part
question.
of, it's all part of the
It's more-
discussion.
As of right now, it's like learning what would be involved in this.
Right.
And I think West Bradford has a system where they have a series of trucks and they collect on certain days. They do cleaning of the trucks, you know, on like a Wednesday, I think it was. Because one of the representative for East Bradford Township was on the board in West Bradford when that whole transition occurred. So right now it's just sort of a learning opportunity. And as I said, most of the genesis is from the frustration that some of our neighbors are experiencing with a particular company.
And collaboration efforts with various other things, like what the police did with their reporting. You know, just look at other ways or means to collaborate whenever we can.
Do what the COG's supposed to do. Can Steve make it?
Yeah, I just think that, I think we're the envy of many of the communities around us for our trash collection. How often we do it and the quality of the service we get. So,
Comes at a price.
Don't
though,
fix
Steve.
what ain't broken, and
yeah, we do a really good job. I don't, you know, I'm not sure the cost versus what Westchester does, but, yeah, I've talked to many of the residents from the townships. We do a fantastic job.
And one thing I'll say coming out of that COG meeting, we talked about how West Goshen Township leads the pavement marking bid each year. Mark has expanded that for 2024, and I think we have, it was 4 municipalities, and I want to say he reached out to 10. So there's going to be many more involved in this year's bid.
Great.
Okay. Also, as John said, I attended February 14th with Haven. One of the things I wanted to add is also, we talked about the advertising of the 988. Before I walked into that meeting, I didn't even know 988 existed. So I'm sure a lot of other people probably that aren't in that realm or field know that. So we talked about how and when timing-wise is good for us to get involved as a township to start helping them out with that advertising. And the other thing relative to that is one thing they didn't expand upon that time, but I've talked to Haven before, is that they're also looking to, within the next 3 or 4 years, have a mental health urgent care unit, similar to what we have now, to expand upon in the future. And then 15th with the police, and then this Thursday we have our fire and EMS coalition that we'll discuss a number of things there. That's it.
Great. Thank you, Tina. And I just have a couple of executive sessions that I'd like to announce. So on January 30th, the board met in an executive session with our labor attorney to discuss legal and personnel issues. We met again later that day on January 30th to discuss personnel issues. Then on February 6th to discuss personnel issues. Again on February 9th to discuss legal issues. And today, this morning, to discuss personnel and HR related issues. And I did want to make one comment regarding Cato. The Cato Spring Conference has been canceled, this year due to unforeseen circumstances. We're still trying to work the wording out, but we're addressing it. So that's all I have. And let's see. Let's move on here now to item number 13, which is Township Manager's announcements. Chris.
Madam Chair, I have a few announcements. First and foremost, I want to thank our Public Works team for all their work in the recent storms. We had a couple back-to-back, which ended up being a little, especially that first one last week, ended up being a little bit more intense than originally anticipated. But they, as always, did navigate it. So I'd like to thank them for all their efforts in the most recent storms. One interesting thing happened. I had a meeting with a company that specializes in affordable and attainable housing. They talked to me about a couple of plots of land in our zoning ordinance, and I explained to them about the land planning committee. So they're going to be coming to the land planning committee in March, on March 12th at 6 o'clock. I did explain to them that affordable and attainable housing is a goal under our zoning ordinance rewrite that we're working on. So it may be a situation where we ask them to sort of partner with us as we go through this process, given their expertise. They've worked in a variety of municipalities in Chester County, put together a pretty interesting presentation. and worked in, I think, I know Phoenixville was one of the municipalities that they talked about. They work with the Chester County Housing Authority. So that'll be coming to the Land Planning Committee on March 12th, I believe is the meeting.
What's the name of the center?
The company's called Penrose.
Penrose?
Penrose, and they're going to come and do a presentation. But like I explained to them, we're just getting started on we're finishing up the RFP process for a zoning ordinance update. So maybe a situation where we kind of work this into our zoning ordinance update.
Yeah, it's a really good time. It's really good.
Speaking of the zoning ordinance update, the Planning Commission held a special meeting on February 5th and then their regular meeting on February 13th. They completed interviews of 2 firms that were selected from the RFP process. In order to move forward with the zoning ordinance update, they interviewed Gilmore and Associates and Collier's Engineering. They did not make a selection yet. I believe that'll be at their March meeting. But they did finish up those 2 interviews. They had, I believe, both of them were over an hour in terms of the interview process. So those have been completed. Our e-newsletter is going to go out at the end of this week for February. So that'll go out on Friday. The EV project is nearly completed around the township's facilities. The new charging stations have been installed. I believe everything outside of the police and on the administration side has been completed. The new concrete and everything, or there might be some final items.
I don't know that it's wired yet.
Okay. So they are finishing up the EV project for the infrastructure expansion as we speak. That should be done it's been delayed because of the weather, but it should be done relatively shortly. And then we'll submit our rebate information to PICO, which will be, I believe, it's $60,000.
What was the time frame maybe on like that reimbursement typically?
We have to file within 6 months of the beginning of the year, so 180 days. I actually just received an email from PICO last week asking for status reports. I provided them with all the information, the contract documents and all the information showing where we're at. So once it's completed and paid for, we'll submit for the reimbursement.
Okay.
And then finally, as it relates to those kinds of projects, we did become aware through Henry Alexander from the SAC of a grant program that DVRPC through Philadelphia, I forget the organization, I think it's Philadelphia Energy Alliance, PEA, I believe is the acronym. What they're essentially doing is gathering information on projects and submitting an application to the EPA. So we submitted our solar array project, which would be up to 40% of the cost, which was based on the estimate would be about $310,000. So how it's going to work is this organization is bundling all the projects that was submitted last week. They're going to bundle everything together and submit a large application to EPA. And we should know beginning of March timeframe if the project is going to be included in that larger submission.
By March?
We'll know if we're going to be included in the larger submission. That's correct.
Were you, so Sean had brought up maybe talking with Kirsten about a more substantial breakdown of the project costs. Were you able to connect with her and was she able to get that to you?
So, well, actually, Kirsten didn't need to do that. Henry and I looked at the information that was in the guidelines that were submitted, and it was general. It was pretty general. So Henry and I were able to put something together, and we submitted that. And PEA has told us that everything we submitted is in line with what they were looking for.
Awesome.
So we have everything submitted, and we're just waiting here if we're going to be included in the larger application.
Thank you for doing that, and thank you to Henry for bringing that to our attention.
So the one additional complication it creates is if we are included in the application, meaning we potentially now have to wait to hear from EPA as to when we get the grant award or not.
Which could take
some time.
Yeah.
So the grant itself, you can only submit for expenses that are incurred within prior 90 days to being awarded the grant. So if we would start the project immediately, and at the pre-bid meeting, the vendors were indicated this work could be done by the end of the year if they would award the contract. So there is a conflict now between potentially receiving grant monies via EPA and our initial what we thought we wanted the timeline to be. So we have to do a little bit of reconsideration on that.
Okay, that's huge. Yeah, right. Well, I don't know, I mean, I guess
We could issue an addendum, kind of a contract addendum with bid specifications to hold off the lag. I mean, technically, I believe you have 60 days from the close in which to actually award the contract that they're generally due for 60 days. You don't have to start the work for quite some time.
I mean, obviously, a winning bidder, if it's a delay to start, would want to have the right to revise pricing. Because,
Absolutely.
That's when it's going to start, right? So I don't know how that complicates our municipal requirements for the bidding process.
I'll talk to Kirsten about that, but the award estimate is the award announcement estimate is October 1st, but I think that's a little overly ambitious.
Is there a matching requirement to this?
The match is essentially the remaining balance. We're eligible for up to 40% of the project cost, so it's 40% of the $700,000 project.
But then we're also eligible for 30% reimbursement from the feds.
So if fully funded, you take an estimated $750,000 project with the grant funding application plus the IRA 30% of the construction costs, you could foreseeably take it down to a $215,000 project.
Yeah, just nice.
Great.
It'd be worth it. Okay.
Well, we also have to see what kind of numbers are coming in from these bidders.
That's the other situation you may be in. You may want to just get the bids just to see what the bid results are, knowing that we have this.
Oh, we have to get the bids. I mean, the conversation at the previous meeting was that panel prices are low. So,
Really?
and they're available. That's why they said they could do it by the end of the year.
They said originally when Kirsten was laying out the timeline, she was talking about, securing panels, supply chain issues, things of that nature. As Mr. Walsh indicated at the pre-bid meeting, they were saying they're not having those issues in this market. They're not having them.
Supply chain is not an issue anymore.
Not for panels or inverters.
Right. Some other components might be a little bit, but certainly not years long, so that it would, make it a 2-year project.
Well, could we get them while the cost is down now? Or could we get the panels now while the cost is down, or would that jeopardize?
It's all part of the bid.
Yeah.
So, but if you get, they're locking in, they're guaranteeing pricing when they bid. So.
For how long?
A set period of time.
60 days.
I was going to say 90
It's not
days.
more than 60 days. So we'll have to look at that and decide what we want to see. But at the moment, the bid process continues. We want to see what happens.
Okay, but let's keep on top of it for sure. Okay.
When do the bids due?
I believe March 11th.
March 11th.
Interesting. Anything else, Chris?
No, Madam Chair, that's everything I have.
All right, thanks very much. We're going to move on now to the Township Engineers stormwater announcements and Greystone update. Ryan, you have anything for us?
I have a couple things tonight. For the stormwater updates, I'm currently awaiting responses to my RFP request to HRG and Carroll Engineering regarding the MS4 projects we have budgeted to design this year. They're the Hagerty Boulevard stream restoration and the West Town Way Barker Park stream restoration project. So I hope to have them before you for consideration in March. Maybe your first meeting, if not, your second meeting in March. As far as the Greystone update, continuing with stormwater, the Government Services Center basin is underway as far as design. That will be completed design hopefully within 2 months. I know they're supposed to be out there this week, but now with the weather, I'm not sure if they got out to do their infiltration testing in the basin this week or not, but it's progressing. That design is progressing with Carroll.
I have a good question for you, Brian. There were residents that were close by that we were speaking with who had an issue with the buffering between their home and the Government Services Center, and I know that the basin project was sort of impending at that point.
Yes, so I still have that on particular, but they haven't established a new facilities director. There's still just people. There's interim. There's nobody that I know of that's been fully implemented. As when Jane Bowers retired, they haven't actually hired her replacement.
Okay.
So I don't have a good person I've been contacting with is for the basin is in the legal department or the guy that files the lots. It's not the person that's there yet. So Chris and I haven't taken a listen meeting through. I've been contacting them.
Okay. Thanks.
Greystone, the only update I have is, according to the HOA management company, they're expecting the turnover of the single-family home HOA to be completely homeowners within the next 1 or 2 months. So March, April timeframe, we're thinking there's going to be enough houses in the single families, not age restricted, but the other side, the other age. So the two HOAs, one is called the Woodlands of Greystone, that's the age restricted. And the Greystone community HOA is the non-age restricted. They are anticipating having that general to the homeowners in the next 1 to 2 months, March, April timeframe.
Is that phase one? Is that considered phase one?
No, this is the twins, towns, and singles, not the age restricted. That's they're anticipating being 75. RLD/NB Homes is telling them they're going to have enough houses occupied to turn it over. So it happens, they don't know, but that's what they're planning on. See what the plan is. And then the last thing I wanted to announce is that I was at with Mark Bertolami and Paul McAvoy, we sat through a PennDOT notice to proceed pre-construction meeting this morning for the Route 3 road diet, where they're going to be doing work. It's on Westchester Pike. I don't know the full scope of the work. I'm waiting for more information to come back. The contractor thinks they might be starting it in June, but they're not sure yet.
And where is it?
Route 3.
What are they doing?
I believe it goes from
Spring Lane all the way into almost into the borough.
Yes.
Is this what they came and talked to us about previously?
This was talked to you about before I started.
Yeah.
Yes.
Because when they were here, I don't remember there being a time frame on it. It was like 2 or 3 years down the road.
That was 2025 was the time frame we talked about.
So
For completion or for starting?
For starting.
What are they doing?
The pre-con meeting was today, and they issued notice to proceed to the contractor. Highway Materials got the contract.
What is the project?
There was no information presented on that. It was all talked about. The pre-con meeting basically talks about all the different levels of DBE and all the paperwork, all the certifications they have to submit. I've asked the contractor to let us know at least a month in advance of when they're looking to start. And he says, we'll try to give you more than that because we're not sure if they're going to start in June or July.
Start what?
Yeah,
I don't know what the project is. All I've been told is a road diet.
Road diet?
Which typically means safety. Like they take away lanes, they take away left turns.
That exit off
202
and all that problems around there.
I think there's a light going in at the intersection of 202 southbound and Route 3.
Sorry.
I also requested that they put a light in front of Chatwood development there because there were 2 ball fields, and they said they're going to look into that. And I never
Don't know if that's in this project or not. I have not gotten the project documents to go with it. I requested a copy today, said it would be sent to me, but I haven't gotten a copy of what the project documents are.
Okay, so we will have access to what they're going to be doing before they do it, PennDOT? The plan, Spring Valley.
Well, the plan's already been done and released for construction, PennDOT's already signed the contract, and it's whatever. But yes, we will have a copy of it here, but I can't tell you if your request for a light has been put into that project or not. I don't have one.
So you're saying June?
They're thinking June, but maybe not, they're not sure. There is no date given today.
Possibly in June start PennDOT project between Spring Lane and Borough. We have no idea what that is.
Well, Madam Chair, I believe that this is the,
Sums it up.
I believe a component of this project is what they came to the board and discussed in, I want to say the beginning, it was early to mid 2022.
With the road, they're going to take that second lane away as
Yes.
you merge sort of onto, yeah.
I believe that's part of it, and also the light replacement at the intersection of South Concord Road and 202. The flashing beacon that would be replaced with a full signal. They came.
Where?
They
Not
came in.
South Concord. South Concord's the other end of.
I thought they were just going to put a light there at the ramp
Well,
up 202.
eliminating that flashing beacon.
Oh, okay.
They came and talked, I believe they came in, I believe it was the beginning of sometime in 2022.
Yeah, it was prior to me starting here, so I don't have any background of recalling this. But all I know is the contractor's been awarded. I mean, the pre-con, the contractor's Highway Materials.
That's all we know.
But I wanted to let you know that there'll be more information coming. And I've requested through PennDOT for me today for the township that we get at least a month's notification for the project starting for construction so we can.
Thank you for asking for that. That's good.
Did they give you any idea of how disruptive their construction? No idea.
The pre-bid, the pre-con meeting with PennDOT is all about making sure your employees sign the right forms, making sure you submit the right payroll forms, making sure you pay things on time, all going through all the legal things they have to do and all that. There's no discussion of the project. So it's all these different departments talking about their legal things. It's all done via Zoom now. It's all Microsoft Teams meeting. It's not even in person anymore. So there's no plan there presented today. So I requested a copy of it.
Okay, thanks, Brian.
Question for Brian. Is the company we authorized you to use for the dam inspection, what's the where are we in that process now?
I sent them some more pictures this morning of the construction I just received from Carroll Engineering because there's things they couldn't see. So they asked for construction photos. I requested them from Carroll. They could go through all their photos. They had to find them. I got them and I sent them to Schnabel today.
Okay. So you're expecting a report from Schnabel?
I'm hoping within the next month, yes.
And just to follow up for Grace, no idea about when they're going to get back to you about your punch list items?
I know that they've addressed some of the punch list items. For example, the bollards that used to line Adam Avenue have been removed and patched. That was one of my things in the punch list, was remove those bollards that were too close to the pavement. They did not need to be there. I asked for bollards at the back of the trail. They put them right in the front along the edge of the road. So that has been done, but as far as other items in the punch list, I can't tell you.
Speaking of the punch list tomorrow, Brian and I, along with members of our streets and parks team, are going to sit down and start the discussion on management, oversight, equipment, related to the park for future dedication.
Yeah.
So we're starting that discussion internally tomorrow afternoon.
I also learned in the punch list process that NV Homes is responsible to turn the curbs and sidewalks back to RLD. So NV Homes has requested a punch list from the township for curbs and sidewalks in all the single-family homes on the south side of Aaron. So they want us to punch all those curbs and sidewalks so they can repair them and give them back to RLD, then RLD will come in and punch list for the actual road. So with their agreement, NV has to turn the sidewalks and curb lines back to RLD. They're responsible to fix the curbs and sidewalks. Then RLD is responsible for the pavement.
Okay.
I did learn that last week. So
And then that'll be turned over to the HOA too.
no, those single-family roads will come to us.
Yeah.
They're in the plan to be dedicated to the township to single families.
Is that the only area in Greystone that's going to be dedicated to the township, the roads?
The single family in Aaron.
And why New Arrow? Yeah.
Yes. The rest of the roads will stay private.
Okay.
When do you anticipate you would be prepared to be able to come before the board with your analysis of what it's going to take for maintenance, staffing, cost, and so forth, for us to take over dedication?
I don't want to commit to anything tonight.
Okay.
Let's have this discussion tomorrow, and then we can see where we're at.
Okay.
One thing I did ask, because of the washout issues, one thing I am going to ask our streets team to look at are areas within of the greatest concern within the trails that could potentially be paved to prevent having to do washout and ongoing maintenance, but that would be after dedication.
Okay.
Yeah, okay, great. Anything else, Brian?
That's all I have for tonight.
Thank you so much. All right, so item number 15, zoning officers announcements, Shelby.
Yeah, Madam Chair. So zoning hearing board case 1-2024 on behalf of Capital Enterprises for 907 Bailey Pike is officially moving forward to the zoning hearing board. They will be hearing the case on Monday, February 26th, so next Monday at 7 p.m. As a reminder, the board has voted to take no position on that application.
This is the signage.
This is, the West Goshen Shopping Center, the signage.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but has construction started in that parking lot on the proposed target?
Yes, it does. Parking, yes. The pre-construction meeting was held, I want to say in late January.
Okay.
So they were released to start on all their site work.
All right.
The plans are recorded. I actually have a field change in my office right now that we need to look at for a slight modification to the stormwater bed for the Chick-fil-A because they needed to change the layout of the Chick-fil-A trash enclosures. They have slightly configured the shape of the bed. They're different
It's
size.
not going to really affect.
No, it just changes the size. The hole went from an L shape to like an S shape.
Okay.
So
All right.
Zoning Hearing Board case number 3-2024 on behalf of 205 Carter Drive is also appearing before the Zoning Hearing Board next Monday, the 26th at 7. Notices have gone out to all the affected residences for both the West Goshen Shopping Center and 205 Carter Drive. For the record, 205 Carter Drive has amended their application to include 220 East Rosedale as they're connecting the parking lot to go through on their plans. So the residents across from 220 East Rosedale also received notification of that plan. The board has also chosen to take no position for that application as well. There are 2 conditional use applications that I've received. Conditional use petition number 1-2024 is an application submitted on behalf of Hammonds Harley Davidson. The subject property is located at 897 South Matlack Street within the I-2 Light Industrial Zoning District. The applicant seeks conditional use approval pursuant to a proposed provision to section 8438A17C of the West Goshen Township zoning ordinance, which will allow for motorcycle sales and related merchandise, the operation of a repair shop, motorcycle sales within the I-2 district. This application is scheduled to go before Board of Supervisors on March 5th at 6 p.m.
Is that our regular meeting?
Yes, that is your regular meeting. And I believe went before the Planning Commission in February. Notices were sent out today for that as well. The second conditional use petition received was for 729 East Union Street. The application was submitted on behalf of MIH US Properties LLC. The subject property is located at 729 East Union Street within the multi-purpose district. The applicant seeks conditional use approval pursuant to section 8496F1 of the West Goshen Township zoning ordinance, which would allow for vehicular sales and service agency limited to the sales and or leasing of new or used automobiles. The applicant intends to continue the operation of the existing mechanic shop on site as well. The application is tentatively scheduled to go before the Board of Supervisors at the Tuesday, March 19th meeting, and with the intent to appear before the Planning Commission on their March 12th meeting. Lastly, there is a pending appeal from a determination that I had made on 111 West Ashbridge Street. On January 11th, an application was submitted on behalf of the Rotary Club of Westchester to erect signage for the 4 Rotary Clubs of Westchester. The proposed signage would be installed on the Westchester Golf and Country Club located at 111 West Ashbridge Street. The sign, which is 5 square feet and approximately 8 feet in height, would be installed on a green U-channel signpost along Route 322 corridor. I subsequently issued a denial on January 26th as the sign did not conform with the zoning code, specifically pertaining to the off-site signage section. The denial letter was provided to the applicant, who has noted their intent to appeal. At this time, we have not received that appeal yet to the zoning hearing board, and they have until February 25th to do so.
Any questions, Shami? All right, all upcoming things. Move on to item number 16, which is approval of the Board of Supervisors meeting minutes of January 24th, 2024. I really like the idea, if there are many corrections, to send an email.
I'll send you an email.
Unless there's something,
all
right, unless there's something really wrong, yeah.
It was 15 pages and a long note. There were bound to be typos.
There's no content changes.
Yeah, exactly, as long as there's nothing kind of crazy in here. All right.
I do have a question on it, just for text, this is not just a typo. The second paragraph from the bottom of page 11. It says, Mr. Wall stated that he agreed with Ms. Smith, but noted that the township should into condensing its IT. What are we trying to say here?
I believe that was we should look into condensing our IT to try to streamline things into our website. I believe that was the intent of that.
So how should that be stated then?
Let me look at it.
Which page are we on?
page 11, second paragraph from the bottom. This wasn't a typo, this is, I don't know what we're trying to contact, trying to say.
I think the word look, it should say look
So look into?
Look into condensing its IT
Just add the
into
word
the
look.
township.
I don't know if it was condensing, and that was one option to see what was available. It was just to consider kind of, maybe it's looking to considering the different options around the Connect system. I think that's what it was about.
Right.
And actually, the alternatives to it, what else is out there?
We're talking about looking at other options.
Yes, that's what.
And getting other quotes.
Speaking of which, while we're on that topic, myself and Dandelions did have a meeting with Civic Plus to discuss the option with them, so we're waiting on a quote from them.
Great.
And it looks like they can perform exactly what we're doing right now and integrate everything with our website.
Great. That would be a good solution.
Yeah.
Once the price is right.
So we're just going to have a word look
So
there.
can we make a motion then to
No,
approve
it's
meeting
more than
minutes
that.
subject to email
I have one thing
changes?
to correct John. It should look into condensing other options / quote IT needs for the township.
Okay, yeah.
So you're going to send that in an email?
I will
We
send
get the
that
gist
in an
of-
email to Chris.
Okay.
Would you like to be copied on that, John?
Well, everybody should be covered, right?
Yes.
Send it to Chris with everybody on the board covered.
All right, so then somebody would like to make a motion to approve the minutes with the condition that the submission of any edits be included.
Yes, I'll go ahead.
Thanks, Sean. Second?
I'll second it.
All right, thanks, Tina. Is there a comment from the public on the motion? Okay, hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All right, motion passes 5-0. And finally, item number 17, approval of the treasurer's report dated January 31st, 2024 for the general fund, the sewer revenue fund, the waste and recycling fund, and the capital reserve fund, and the bills to be paid from these funds. Are there any questions on the bills to be paid?
Just a question here. Chris, on page 2 there, you look at the, look back at the prior 2 years. The earned income tax is considerably less this year in 2024 compared to 2023 and 2022. Why do you think that is, or is it just a way it worked out time of the month for this particular report?
It might be the timing. I would have to check with Christine. It might be the report timing.
And that's another question on the 80 account. 80753. There's assistant township manager car wash twice over a period of January. Who uses that vehicle?
That vehicle's a pool vehicle at this point, but there's still it's all of our vehicles that are on the same account.
It's just not assigned to any particular individual?
No, it is not.
All right, my last question was, on the PICO bills, has there ever been an energy conservation analysis by PICO done? They call it a comprehensive energy assessment. Has anything like that been done by us at the township to determine what ways in which we might be able to be more conservative in our use of PICO's electricity?
Almost like an energy audit.
It's like, they call it a comprehensive energy assessment.
Not that I'm aware of.
Is that something we can talk to Mike about?
Sure, absolutely.
Is that something I think might be worthwhile checking into, like, for example, lighting? There might be things that can be done to control lighting to make it more efficient, bring the bills down.
And they do that for free too, don't they?
Well, they may charge us being a municipality, but that's something we
I know
can.
some homeowners, they don't charge.
Yeah, I had one at home, but the homeowner ones really focus on your lighting. They bring a bunch of bulbs and stuff for your incandescents out if you still have any.
That's
Yeah,
about it.
they didn't go and do any draft checking around my windows and doors. It's quite rudimentary, but the industrial or the building size ones will be a different level of audit.
Yeah.
So if you could check with Mike.
Absolutely.
It's a good suggestion.
I just have one on the bill list for BOS meeting. This is a question. I think I know the answer, but I just wanted to confirm it to the chief. Renewed traffic cloud. Is that cloud to store data? Because that was what, $1,500? Is that what that is? Okay. And is that automatic, it goes in the cloud, or is that?
That's a traffic unit with the investigations. So yeah, that's an automatic event.
Okay.
Any other questions, Tina?
No, that's it, thank you.
Okay. Does somebody want to make a motion then to approve the bills?
I'll make a motion to approve the treasurer's report and the bills to be paid.
A second.
All right, thanks very much. Tina, any public comment or questions? Yes, Mr. Brown.
Where did the interest from last year's CDs come? Does that come in at this point?
Yeah, it's actually on the report, a lot of it.
And how much was it?
It was roughly, I want to say, just under 1.2 million, I believe.
What's the intention to do with that?
Well, that's our current fund balances. Like I said on that KRBA report, we have a healthy fund balance and way for the liquidity needs. So,
Like increases by 10%, doesn't
well, it was we budgeted for a lot of it too. Remember, we knew we were going to have a substantial income from the CDs in the December timeframe, so it was no.
That was actually, because they were redeemed in December, that was in the December treasurer's report.
It was, I guess.
Okay. Doug?
For Mr. Hellman's concerned about their earned income, it said that end of the quarter when it's higher, most businesses pay the quarter for earned income. So it's a little lower now, but at the quarter it's higher.
But the issue though was the January, the January number was lower compared to the January number last year and the year before. So we just want to make sure it's not something that's more of a trend here, or is it just some other explanation?
Thanks. Is there a motion to it? Oh, I'm sorry. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
The motion passes 5-0. Is there a motion to adjourn? I'll make a motion to adjourn. Is there a second?
Second.
Thanks, Nate. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, everybody. Thanks for being here.
Thanks, everybody.
Have a good night.
Thank you.